Hello, my friends. Okay. Glad to be here. It's an honor. I got to issue a disclaimer. I'm not an avalanche professional. I'm an interested observer. I do get to hang out with a lot of scientists, geologists, glaciologists, hydrologists, and so on. So I'm going to start right off. These photographs are taken from the airplane that I built over a 9-year period in the 1990s. And I've been doing mountain photography since 2002. This first photograph is not my photograph, but it is probably familiar to most of you, even though you don't realize it. It was taken by Ruth Fremson, a 3-time Pulitzer Prize-winning photographer for the New York Times from my airplane. And this is the backside of Cowboy Mountain. And this photograph appeared in the New York Times behind, in the print version of Snowfall, the avalanche at Tunnel Creek. She was the photographer for that project. These pictures, I'm not going to attempt too much to explain them, but I will say a couple things about them, and you can draw your own conclusions. To start with, one of your user groups, snowmobilers. These photographs are taken on the south side of Mount Baker, very popular snowmobile recreation area. And as a non-avalanche professional, but an observer of many avalanches in all seasons, all over many mountain ranges, I'm flying along and I see stuff like this, and I wonder, you know, what the hell? Kind of the best way to do it, but I'm engaged in a fairly risky endeavor myself, so I don't want to be overly judgmental about it. I'm just saying, you know. Like right here, what's the order of things? I've made stupid mistakes myself, so I'm not letting myself off the hook by any means. I heard the 5 user groups, and I want to add a 6th one, bicycle riders. Those of you from the Northwest, particularly the northern part of the state, know that you can ride the North Cascades Highway in the spring before the highway opens, and you're pretty much free of traffic hazards, but not necessarily avalanche hazards. So I think maybe bicyclists should be added to become the 6th user group. This is right by Ruby Mountain. If you've driven the North Cascades Highway, you know where the chutes come down there. They're not always real obvious. I've done a lot of photography with the Department of Transportation on the North Cascades Highway, Stevens Pass Highway, and I-90. And so this photograph here is the side of Ruby Mountain where that previous avalanche occurred. It's in one of those smaller chutes. It's probably like this one here. I'm not entirely sure about that. I have a few more photographs from the Highway Avalanche Project. This one's also off the North Cascades Highway. This one, that big avalanche path that's kind of in the middle there with that gouge in it, that thing the snow doesn't reach the highway, but the trough is a source of debris flows, particularly in high precipitation events. I think the most recent one was, a couple years ago, it put down 3 or 4 feet of gravel and mud all over the highway when the highway was open. There's kind of a detail shot of it, and you can see where the highway department's kind of tried to channel the flow in a certain direction to try and sort of manage it. I mean, they're not really going to stop Mount Hardy from sliding down in there, but maybe they can direct it. A little farther up the highway, this is the low point between Rainy Pass and Washington Pass. That's the Pacific Crest Trail parking lot down there, and that's just a big avalanche chute that comes down between the passes. You can see the North Cascades Highway heading up to Washington Pass there on the right. And that is a familiar sight to anybody that's ever been up there, the hairpin turn. And this is part of the effort to photograph all the avalanche chutes on the highway for the DOT. And this is actually kind of a low snow situation. A lot of times that road would be completely buried. You wouldn't be able to tell where the shoulders are from the depths of snow. I think this is in January, and probably in February and March is when the real accumulation starts coming down, avalanches. And the Stevens Pass Highway just west of the ski area there as you head up. This photograph also comes from the Stevens Pass. This is Tumwater Canyon looking down towards Leavenworth. And I never really think about this too much as an avalanche hazard area, but apparently those chutes on the right, back when it used to snow a lot, the avalanches would come down across the river and then cover the highway from that perspective. Okay, I'm just throwing this out here. I already saw one picture of the north side Chair Peak, and here's another. And this is another one of those things where I look at it and I go, you know, like there's a guy, and another guy. And there's actually a guy standing down here too. So this is where all of you come in, I guess, in, you know. I don't know, maybe some of you are in this picture. Possible. Here's just a little gallery of photographs. This one struck me. It's not that big. This is on the south side of El Dorado in North Cascades National Park. This is in October. Kind of early. Bear in mind that from the airplane, you know, it doesn't look that big, but if you were on the ground, it would be big. It's just like that bicycle picture, you know. These things don't look too big from the air, but when you're down there standing next to them, all of a sudden you realize they're gigantic. South side of Forbidden Peak. I see a lot of that kind of thing where it goes right down to the bare rock. It's not like, I mean, the rock is the persistent slab. That's what it amounts to. This is also Forbidden Peak's North Ridge. This one caught my interest because the fracture line I estimated was at least a mile long. So you're looking at one big whack coming off that. And then another one of my favorite areas, this is Baker Course in the Park Glacier head wall with a fracture line that extends completely from one side of the head wall to the other. This avalanche probably went down a horizontal mile, I would say. Just a few, you know, when I'm flying sometimes in extreme conditions, I heard the question of extreme versus high and so on, and I've flown in situations where every conceivable slope has got an avalanche on it. It's really remarkable to see sometimes. This is also in the North Cascades. This is close to El Dorado. This is from the Coast Mountains. This is a little area called Mount Willoughby. This is between the let's see, it would be the Hailtsuk ice field where Mount Silverthrone is and the Monarch ice field. It's a little satellite area called Mount Willoughby. And I was struck by these three particular avalanches right in a row. And that farthest one in particular that goes all the way down to the valley bottom and around the corner. Another one that went to ground up by Monogram Lake, North Cascades National Park again. This is on the south side of Bonanza Peak in the Glacier Peak Wilderness. This is the effect of repeated avalanches down onto Hart Lake, up Railroad Creek. And I know some of you here are from over on the Methow side. This is a little slope on this would be the south end of Vasiliki Ridge coming off of Silver Star headed towards Snagtooth Ridge. I'm not sure, but I don't think that peak has a name. It might be one of the kangaroos. This is a spectacular one right here. This is Klawati Peak up there, the TP Towers to the left, heading around towards El Dorado. This fracture line goes completely around the upper side of that drainage. I'm only, in the photograph, there's only half of it. I mean, you can only see from down here going up. And it also has a component, I don't know if you can see right up there, right against the rock on Klawati. So basically from down here all the way up there, all the way around, and then keeps going around the other side. And based on my experience, that's probably at least a 6-foot high crack, at least, I would say. This is a June avalanche off the upper Boston Glacier. Had a big, late spring snowfall, and lo and behold, warm weather right behind it. Blam, down it comes. These are spring avalanches in the North Fork of the Cascade River coming down off Johannesburg. I'm sure many of you have hiked up there from time to time and you hear the avalanches coming down. Earlier in the year, maybe before the road is open, this is what the valley bottom looks like. And then I have I've seen this a few times. This is what I call a failed avalanche. And this one's on Dome Peak in the Glacier Peak Wilderness. You hear about the whoomph and all that, well, this gives real meaning to it because like it goes, down about 100 feet and then just stops. I want to turn quick to the subject of cornices. I've seen a lot of really cool cornices. This is off of the southeast side of Cloudcap Peak on the east side of Mount Shuckson in North Cascades National Park. One of my favorite cornice shots ever is right here. When you're skiing along the ridge and you've heard, stay back from the edge, just in case you didn't notice, there's the shadow of the airplane right there. Isn't that awesome? God, I flew by that and I go, holy crap. This is Mount Crowder, kind of a satellite peak off the west side of the Pickets. That's Mount Slessie in British Columbia in the background. This one's on the northeast face of Davis Peak. If you drive up the North Cascades Highway, Davis Peak is kind of right by Gorge Creek. And this particular face has the distinction of one of the greatest reliefs in a horizontal mile in the lower 48. When you start talking to people that are interested in this sort of thing, there'll be fist fights. But from my standpoint, it's in the top 3 or so. Again, I'm just an interested observer. I don't really want to take part in the fight. These next cornices are very, very dangerous. Those have caused trouble over the years. I'm not going to say any more about that. That's in the Pasayten Wilderness. That's another flyby where I was like, huh? I got to go back and take another look, a very close look. Some of you might know Dave Burdick, a prominent climber from Seattle. I was taking him on a little ride one time years ago, and this is in the national park, North Cascades National Park. This is a little avalanche up high at about 8,300 feet. And that little avalanche slid down and triggered this little avalanche. And those two combined to go down over 4,000 feet to the bottom of Bear Creek. So in this photograph, there's the upper one right there. Here's the lower one, and then this goes all the way down. And that's not the bottom of it, because my camera doesn't have wide enough angle to catch all the way from the top of the peak to Bear Creek. This is a series of Scurlock-triggered avalanches. This is on the Neve Glacier on Snowfield Peak in North Cascades National Park, a little one, where a big pillar of ice fell over and set off an avalanche. Here's one on Baker, where the Scurlock ended up way down this is on the Coleman Glacier, but also triggered an avalanche up high underneath the ice field there. This is one, if you've climbed Baker, I think you're probably familiar with, on the north side of Colfax. The arrows point to the climber's track. This photograph was taken in 2007. So the next photograph was taken this past summer. Same spot. Those are climbers right there. A little different scale. There's more of a detail of it. I don't think they were standing there when that happened. It happened about a week before this. Somebody told me about it, so I went up and photographed it. I love this picture. This is up in northern British Columbia on the Andre ice field. It's kind of it's just south of the Stikine, if you know where that is. Big, huge, flat ice field, but way out in the middle, you got that down there. So I just always was thinking, like, you're on this ski tour, you're going across this ice field, and all of a sudden, it's like, what? There's no avalanche danger there. This is a secondary byproduct of an avalanche. This is on the east side of Queen Bess, northeast corner of the Monarch ice field. It's called the Nostatuco River. And this is caused by an ice avalanche into Queen Bess Lake. And I apologize for the quality of the next picture, but this shows what happened. Big section of the glacier slid off into the lake, triggered a mini tsunami that overbound the outlet of the lake and down the river. And so this is a borrowed photograph that shows the glacier, the lake. And I'm kind of drawn to the close here, but I want to show you a short little video. This is the crater on Mount Baker. This is, right there is called the sulfur cone fumaroles. Baker is hot in certain areas inside the crater. So sulfur cone fumaroles here. This is really the hottest area over here on this slope. There's the Black Buttes. Sherman Peak. This is what I call the east face of Sherman Peak. These two things here I call the mice. When there's more snow, it just looks like a couple of mice sitting there. This is the east, what's called the East Breach. This goes down the Boulder Glacier there, Lahar Lookout, and then the Summit Plateau of Baker. And just for a sense of scale, I've got a photo here of my buddy Dave Tucker from Bellingham. A few years ago, he and I and a technician from the Geological Survey flew into the crater to do some scientific measuring by helicopter. I didn't fly the helicopter. We were Highline from Darrington flew us up just outside the crater, and then we hiked in. And we hiked over to the sulfur cone fumaroles. And so, again, this is that east face right there, sulfur cone fumaroles. That's as close as we dared to get to it. And now, with any look at all this little video we'll play. Seismograph of this avalanche. That's an intermittent avalanche. It comes off there every 2 to 5 years. That slope's a deposition slope. Wind howls from the west through the crater of Baker, and it piles up on that slope. And it happens in the generally summer months, although that one was in October, but June, July, that sort of a thing. This particular one, there was a group of Knowles students on the Boulder Glacier down below when it broke. And they were more than a mile from where it broke, and they ran, but they didn't need to run because it didn't quite get to them. I got one more picture. Well, you know. I photographed that thing on 4 separate occasions spread out over the years because I'd get a call, hey, sure. Anyway, I'm going to finish up with a picture I took 10 days ago up in Canada of a little ski run that you guys, it's still waiting for its 3rd descent, I think. Oh, there you go. Now, I just want to point something out here. This hasn't been skied yet. Okay, that's the end of my presentation.
So we have some time for questions if you're up for it. Any questions out there? Oh, so we want to use a mic since we're live streaming, so raise your hand. Yeah.
I did hear that question. That's Mount Robson. That's the north face is the snowy part. This part right here is the Emperor face. The ridge going up the right side is the Emperor Ridge. As I see it, this is one of the most fabled mountains and faces in all of North America. So actually, 10 days ago, that slope's got a lot of ice on it, so I'd say you want to wait a little before you.
How old were you when you started building your airplane?
Well, let's see. I started in 1992. 1992, I'd say, and I was born in 1992. I think I was 40 years old. If I can build an airplane, you people could build an airplane. That's what I'd always tell everybody. But it did take 9 years of a lot of work and just a ton of money, especially towards the end.
What is your process for photographing while flying the airplane?
I've had variations of that question asked many times. I'd say that's the most common question. The airplane is, first of all, machines are designed with stability. Like when you let go of the steering wheel of your car, you don't want the car just to veer off onto the side of the road. So engineers design stability. The airplane's the same way. My particular airplane is pretty stable. If I let go of the controls, particularly if it's all trimmed out for a level flight, it just kind of tends to stay where it's going. It's a low-wing airplane with a bubble canopy, and it has a control stick. So, and I don't want you to get the wrong idea, but I fly with my knee. While taking the photograph. So, like here, you're flying around it. You're not flying at it. So, well, really, I mean, if you know the name Austin Post, one of the great aerial photographers of the golden age of glaciology, he used film cameras, big, huge military surveillance film cameras, and he would rig the airplane because he was flying with the military and whoever he could get to carry him around. But one of those cameras was mounted in the nose of the airplane. So he had to fly at what he was photographing, which is, dangerous, let's face it. No, it's all, I just bank it to get the wing out of the picture, and I'm using a good camera. So, yeah. I think it's pretty easy, but, maybe it isn't.
I was wondering if you could show us a picture of your airplane.
Regrettably, I didn't put one in here because I was designed for speed and efficiency today. I will tell you it's a Vans aircraft RV6. It's very little. It would easily fit in this corner of the building. It's fast. Cruise speed at altitude is probably 185 to 190 miles an hour. For photography, I don't go that fast. You really want to slow down and get control of things. The other thing is when you hit turbulence going that fast, it's not comfortable. So you want to be slowed down. It's like a car over a bumpy road. It doesn't get smoother the faster you go. It gets worse.
Actually, is your camera lens, you take a picture inside the...
Through the plexiglass, yeah.
Don't deal with...
No, you don't, I've had many people say you can't do that. Well, you can do it. But I have over the years, this might be a little surprising, but I tend to be obsessive about certain things, and I've taken all these technical problems that I've faced and I've tried to address them one thing at a time. And that very first photograph you saw there by Ruth, I mean, there's a Pulitzer Prize winning photographer and a Pulitzer Prize winning article. So, you just take each individual problem and say, how am I going to fix this? And work through it, and you get results. Thank you guys very much. It's a real pleasure.
Awesome.